Well, isn't this appearance very timely? The Great Orbax back on Morning Live, Department of Physics at the University of Guelph, because we kick off. So April is World Astronomy Month.
It is, yeah.
So we have that, and we'll get to that. But there's an announcement coming up this morning
big news today.
About the next crew heading to the moon, and it's going to involve a Canadian.
That's right. So Artemis II will be launching. We had the Artemis I project that happened. It took that large craft, it tested it by flying it around the moon.
It's got
the car, nice piece of fuzzy dice in the front. But so we'll be doing our first lunar flybys in 50 years with actual a crewed ship. So 4 astronauts will be going past the moon. And one of them is going to be announced as a Canadian astronaut.
Okay. Why have we not been to the moon in 50 years?
Well, this is the thing. We stopped going in 1972, and we haven't been back. And, you know, like I grew up as a kid of the 80s, and to me, I was always promised lunar bases, deep ocean fortresses, death rays on Mars and everything else that you saw in pop culture back then. But for some reason, just in 50 years, we've not done we've not put boots on the moon. Okay,
so you say as a kid, so like kids love space, and what does this mean to have a Canadian, one of us, going up?
Well, this is the thing. You know, to me, it's an inspiration to young people sort of everywhere. If we put a Canadian astronaut on the moon, or even to fly by the moon, as in the case of Artemis II, you suddenly have a whole generation of young people who can look towards that and see themselves reflected in that, and say, it's a possibility that as a young person you could end up doing science on the moon.
Okay, so Artemis II is not landing on the moon.
No, Artemis II is just flying past the moon, and in the third part of this project, which is supposed to be taking place by 2025, the idea is that we'll have an orbiting lunar science space station called the Gateway, which will act as sort of a nexus for ships to go from Earth to the moon, and then for astronauts to go from the Gateway to the surface of the moon itself and establish a lunar base.
Okay, so we'll wait for that announcement at 11 o'clock. Very exciting there. World Astronomy Month is very exciting too. What do we got to look forward to there?
So there's lots of stuff in April that are taking place. One of the big things in April that's occurring, we have a meteor shower coming up at the end of April. I know I'm always telling you to look up into the sky and to see something, and typically, I mean, I blame you.
You're looking over at Brian.
I blame Brian here. It's always clouds. Why is it always clouds, Brian? But we've got a span of about 3 to 4 days, peaking on the 22nd and the 23rd of April. Only a couple days after the new moon. So the sky will be really dark, and after midnight, you should be able to see up to 18 meteors an hour in the east. So if you look up towards the eastern sky, you'll be able to see shooting stars, hopefully around then.
With the light pollution getting in the way of that?
It's possible, but it is high up. So it's not like it's going to be just sitting on the horizon. It's going to be high up in the eastern sky.
April 13th, the launch of the JUICE mission?
So there's a new exciting project that's taking place. The European Space Agency is launching a new observer. It's called the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, which they've shortened to JUICE somehow. And
who comes up with the acronym for those?
And what will be happening is it'll take 8 years for that to get to Jupiter, and it's going to be investigating the 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter, so the 4 big moons up there, with the idea that it'll eventually sort of start orbiting Ganymede, which is the biggest one, bigger than Mercury, bigger than Pluto, and it will actually try to see if it's a habitable environment or ever has been a habitable environment.
Okay, so how far away is?
Oh, real far.
Yeah.
So it's way out there. It's going to take 8 years. In comparison, it takes about 2 to 3 days to get to the moon. It's going to take 8 years to get us out to Jupiter with this satellite. Now, part of that is it's going to be orbiting the Earth a bunch, getting gravitational assists and bouncing back out. But this is the biggest science payload that's ever been launched to the outer solar system.
Yeah, I love when you're shooting these videos.
Oh,
because,
thank you.
Well, there you go. But like the excitement that you have for space and astronomy, I don't know. It's contagious.
I've often been called contagious.
But did you did you have somebody in your life that got you into astronomy? Like, when did you really kind of grab onto it?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I was fascinated with anything space. I grew up as a kid of the 80s, looking at science fiction, Doctor Who, Star Trek, anything like that I could get my hands on. And then, as I progressed, I kind of wandered away from it. But there was always a unifying thing. Like even as a child, I remember sitting with my grandfather and looking up and having him tell me about the constellations. Now later, I found out he was lying about all of them, and they were made up. But I mean, it still inspired in me this passion for looking up at the night sky. But that's one of the things that I say about my astronomy videos, which you can find on the Guelph Physics YouTube page. The April one just dropped on Saturday. But what I've noticed is that it's something that the whole family can do. Whether you're interested in science or whether you just want to support a junior scientist in your house and their interest, it's an easy enough thing to go out sit in the backyard, take a look up at the sky, and wonder what's happening up there. And we're just this tiny part of this grand machine that everything's spinning.
Our youngest, Fee, I don't know, she loves the moon.
Yeah.
And then she always recognizes when she can see the moon.
Well,
and this started when she was young, when she was 2. And she's like the moon, and then she's always seeing when the moon.
And even with a cheap pair of binoculars, so you still have a ton of suit money, you'd be able to give her, even with binoculars, you can see a gorgeous shot of the moon, or small telescopes. Especially now with smartphones, you can attach your smartphones to most telescopes and take images of the moon just in your backyard.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that? And we're gonna have people up there.
Yeah, and Canadian
right?
up there.
A Canadian. Canadian's gonna fly past it.
Possibly a Canadian woman. Jennifer City Gibbons, Jeremy Hansen, Joshua Kurtik, or David St. Jacques, or the 4 Canadians that are up for that. Do you think they already know?
Oh, I mean,
They would already
I
know?
would assume. I mean, I would assume. I couldn't possibly know myself. I mean, but you would think somebody would know in advance, right?
Yeah. It's got to be competitive because there's 41 altogether.
Or do they do it like a roll up the rim sort of style? So they bring in a bunch of cups and everybody rolls up their edges, and it's like one guy gets a car, or somebody gets it's a free you get a croissant or whatever they sell at these places. I'll keep them generically not named.
Yeah.
And then you open it up and it says you're going to the moon.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? We're getting a thank you. So we're getting a thank you.
No. If you want to know more about the April sky, check out our latest April stargazing, which is on the Guelph Physics YouTube page. Thank you so much for having me.
When are you back on?
Oh, geez, I couldn't even imagine. It would be in my phone somewhere.
Okay, he'll be back, though. He'll be getting Brian Hack. All right, taking a break. More Morning Live coming up on your Monday.